Great. Next, moth plant seed viability. This is something a lot of us are interested in. So thank you. It's Sarah, is it? Speaking to this?
Yes. That's it's a little bit of work that I've been doing. So if we can rock into that now, if you like.
Fabulous. Thank you.
So one of the things we wanted to find out if we can actually kill the seed in the plant with Metsulfuron. We know that Metsulfuron can kill seeds in Ragwort, ginger, and Arum lilies. There's some Arum lilies that I did with some Met gel just on the stems of the Arum lilies, and one of them happened to have a seed on it. So those seeds. So does it work on moth plant? Yeah. Next slide. Well, we know that if we cut the moth plant off at the base, even the little small pods, 5 to 7 centimetres, do have viable seed, unfortunately. These pods were way up high in just outside our office, actually, and we got them down. That obviously opened up, and so we let them open up in the air, but they had been cut off quite some time ago when they were quite small. And yes, they still do have viable seeds in them. Next one. So we scraped some stems and put some Met gel on, about 2 meters away from the pods. We put some Met gel on some unscraped stems, like really close to the pods, and we sprayed some stems with 0.5 gram Metsulfuron in 0.5 litre of water with a couple of drops of dish liquid. So it was kind of a standard Met mix there. So that's what we did with the Metsulfuron. Just a spoiler here, the outcome is not that crash hot. But anyway, carry on. So the seeds were harvested when the pods were naturally open. So we waited for them to do their thing on the tree, and 100 seeds from each side were planted just to see how they were going. So the results looked really promising. To start with, we had 6 come up with the scraped one, none come up with the unscraped one close to the pod, 8 with a stem spray, and the control had 40 seedlings. So it was looking really good, and we could say, oh, okay, well, it may not work totally, but it does work a little bit. That was in August. And in January, they were still looking fairly hopeful. The same plants were there, the same number of plants. So that was looking very hopeful. And then we came to March, and it didn't look nearly as hopeful. So these, for some reason, there's a double germination time for the moth plant seed, appears to be. There was quite a lot, another extra 16 came up in the control, so it wasn't just the other ones. And of course we had 47 come up in the unscraped one, which we were hoping would have none. So we sort of almost have very similar numbers there on all of them. Now the questions will become, well, will those come, reach maturity, or what will happen? We don't know. So it can possibly cause some reduction in seed viability, but that's not really useful. We wanted to be able to kill the seeds way up in the trees, not right next door to the pods. We can pull the pods off, that's all right. Stem treatment with Met gel actually kills the plants, no problem. And stem treatment with spraying did not kill the plants, just stem treating them actually wasn't effective. So there's some learnings there, but not necessarily the ones we wanted. The question now becomes, and I might just do this, is if I pull out all those seedlings, how many more will come up? And because I don't know how long moth plant seed lasts, does it have a long seed life? I don't think so.
But 7 years. 7 years is what we've discovered.
7 years? Well, that could be. So what we'll do, pull out those seedlings that have come up, and just see. And maybe I'll pot up some of them to see. Well, are they actually going to, are they going to grow? So this year we're going to doing some different trials using different bits of Metsulfuron to see if we can kill the pods in different ways. So yeah, that's a little bit of oops, didn't work. However, that's learning as well. So
Thank you.
yeah. Oh yeah, what spray? Somebody says, what spray did you use that didn't work on moth plant trial? Well, the spray that we sprayed the stems with was just a standard, what we call a stump mix for a ginger. And we just used that on the stems. But that wasn't effective either. Never mind.
So one of the questions I had when you were talking about the pod size that was viable is, did you look at the colour of the seeds? I've heard other people talk about looking at the colour of the seeds if you open a pod, and that can tell you whether they're going to be viable or not.
They all look very similar. But the small ones, I just don't remember those. I think they were all fairly black. I know one time I did do some trials just to see, I tried to do some trials on small pods versus big pods, and are they viable when they're in little pods? But I put them in little in little bags, paper envelopes under the desk, thinking that's nice and dry and it'll be fine. But of course, as soon as there was a slight hint of moisture, the pods actually started to rot and all the seeds would not grow. So yeah, we do know that as soon as those seeds get rotten, and that might be the colour change that people are talking about, that they just didn't grow. So that was like, oh, okay, we'll do it a different way.
Cool. A lot of the questions about spraying the leaves and the stems.
Yeah, one of the things we will try this year is overall spraying, because we haven't actually done that yet. It is quite hard to find a moth plant, because as soon as you do something with a moth plant, somebody will come along and pull it out, and you lose your trial. So finding somewhere where nobody's going to go and nail it. I've got a couple of little spots now that behind a fence where people are not going to go. So I will try that this year.
Brilliant. And someone's asking about penetrant to the spray mix.
Yes, I didn't put a proper penetrant. I just put a couple of drops of dish liquid in, which probably, because it was just a really small, like only half a litre I was using, so I didn't. I probably should have put a proper penetrant in. That might have made a difference. But having said that, when the stems were gelled with quite strong, met gel's quite strong, that didn't actually have any effect. So I'm not sure that the penetrant would have made much difference to those sprayed stems.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you. It's really good that you're doing these trials, because I know a lot of us have a lot of questions. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Brilliant. Next is Selaginella. I can never say that one. Does anyone want to jump in and tell me how to say it properly?
Selaginella.
Thank you. African club moss with baking soda, and this is Julia. Thank you.
Kia ora, everybody. I'm part of the Tenera Gully Restoration Project, and a while ago we noticed 4 little patches of Selaginella along the main track on the bottom of the gully. Most were just 1 or 2 plants getting started, and the other patch was about a square metre. It's typical of Selaginella that it turns up sort of trackside, because the spores and fragments get carried in on people's boots. So it has a reputation for being unkillable, but a friend of mine, Shelley Heiss-Dunlop, had come across 2 occasions where baking soda had been applied, and we thought we would try that. So we went out with a cheap tub of baking soda and a little sieve, and spread the baking soda through the sieve onto the Selaginella. It was extremely effective on the 3 little patches, which were just 1 or 2 plants. They haven't been seen since. The larger area, there was some regrowth, and this is actually the second time round that we've gone back. But you can see it's just a scattering now, whereas before it was quite throughout all the weeds that you see in that picture. Unfortunately, it's right beside a climbing rata that we planted a few years ago, intermixed with it really. So here you have the Selaginella before the second treatment was applied, what it looked like under the dose of baking soda. And I think the next slide will show that unfortunately it has also affected.
Sorry, I didn't add that one in, Julie. I was just trying to find it.
Oh, okay. Is this the end of the slides?
Yeah, it does seem to be.
Oh, well, half the slides are here. The baking soda that actually landed on the leaves of the Metrosideros has killed those leaves. So we must be far more careful next time to move that out of the way and just target the Selaginella.
I can just share that one now, Julia. I'll find it.
Okay. I've tried researching, Google and so forth on why baking soda works on Selaginella. The only thing I have come across is that it has a reputation at killing weeds, and that's not true, it said on Google. See, here we have the little rounded leaves of the Metrosideros where the baking soda has actually landed. They have turned brown. This is just a week or 2 ago, and you can see it hasn't damaged all the leaves. I left it like this for the photograph. We will certainly clean up the site now that you've got the picture. I think it's very effective, and I think it will be a matter of revisiting the sites for a few times. Once it's vanished, of course, it's a little bit hard to find the site because it's such a tiny plant, and so Nigel has GPS them all, and we can go back. I've also put a tape nearby so we can go to the exact spot and check for any little tiny regrowth of Selaginella. Most people don't notice Selaginella because it's so similar to our native plants that a non-weedy person would just think it was part of the proper stuff. But once you've got your eye for it, of course, it's something you don't want to see, and you want to kill it before it starts sporing and your own sites start spreading spores further around. The info did say the spores are only viable for a year, which is good to know. Yes, so we will just keep on going back. It's in our work area anyway. It's quite easy to keep an eye on it. And I think it's looking pretty hopeful that if we're persistent, we'll kill it all off.
Thank you. There's a really good comment here about perhaps it's the alkalinity, just a guess. And then Chris is saying that he's got a lot of experience doing it, and he has found that new patches are easily killed off using glyphosate, met, or 25% bleach. But a plant that has been established for a couple of years or more is very difficult to kill. We believe that the problem is that it is non-vascular plant, so that chems don't translocate down to the roots. And if the plant is well established, then it has deep roots. So that's really interesting. Thank you.
Most of the 1 square metre has gone with baking soda, and it's wonderful not to be putting any herbicide into the area. If you can do it with something that's just simply using strong alkalinity to kill a plant, I feel much happier about that.
Just a quick question. If it's such a small site, is there a reason why manual removal wouldn't work?
Yes, that's what we did at first, sorry. Manual removal, yeah.
And it kept coming back.
Well, we've only... no. Manual removal is quite... it was the big site that I had to do manual removal. And when you've got a whole host of other weeds, including Tradescantia, it's very hard to get every bit because there's layers of plants there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you. That's really interesting. So next,
I think Rachel's got her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Rachel.
Hi, that's all right. I just whether everyone noticed it on the chat. I've killed African club moss before now with just neat white wine vinegar as well from just shove straight from the bottle, cheap from supermarket, into a spray gun and just sort of sprayed it onto it. So maybe a similar thing, right, with the pH. Seemed to work quite well on a probably similar size patch as what you're talking about.
The foliage of Selaginella is only a few cells thick. I would think it's very thin. So I guess anything nasty, acid or alkaline, will damage and kill the leaves. It's
probably from a point of view of volume of what you're using. Baking soda might be better than vinegar though. Because I did use quite a bit.
We did talk about maybe having a talcum powder bottle full of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That would work really well. Yeah, that's really good to know though, because I think it's a question that a lot of people ask actually about African club moss, because it does seem to be a hard one.
I'm sure we'll take several follow-ups.
Yes, Chris is saying that it grows back after a year or two in these places.
I suppose it's like any of these things. It's never over with the first go.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll report back in 2025.
Yeah. Awesome work though. Thanks.
I've just Chris's slides have just come in, so I'm going to share them from a different screen. Hopefully they're going to work.
Thank you.
So, shall I start talking?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I present these. It's the first time I've used Keynote. If anyone knows how to do Keynote. You
just go down. If you open it, you can then click forward.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, let's do that for now.
Right, I can fire on to the next one. That's good. So climbing asparagus is something that our teams have had various arguments about and so on. And so we've tried to document a reasonable amount of knowledge to encourage them with what they regarded as sort of, why are we wasting our time with this little plant when there's enormous old man's beards and other big ones above? And so the arguments have gone back and forth. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Can everyone make sure they've got their microphones off if they're not presenting?
There's a bit of squeaking going on. Yeah. So if we just go to the next one, please, Nigel. So this is a very good example on Waiheke Island of what happens with climbing asparagus when it's just totally left unchecked. So I have yet to spot a single living native tree seedling in amongst that sea of climbing asparagus. And this is the whole essence of the problem, that it will, inside there, you'll have, oops, it's disappeared.
Nigel, it's just gone blank.
The tendrils wrap themselves around the young seedlings. And I don't know whether you've ever tried to, do you want to?
We're just having technical difficulties. We'll get back to you in a moment.
I can keep talking. Anyway, for those who are familiar with climbing asparagus, I don't know if you've ever tried to break the stem manually. It is actually quite hard. And if you actually get hold of the seed outside of the little orangey red berries, it's worthwhile doing, because if you get a pair of pliers, I don't have an enormously strong grip, but I'm reasonable. I couldn't squash it with the pliers, and I had to put it in a vise to squash it. And it just shows how resilient the seeds are. So they've got a long seed life. I'm sure somebody here can pop in with an exact number, but I believe it's in the 20 years sort of mark. And so it's very resilient. It can sort of wander around with floods, go downhill easily, and of course is carried by birds. So
can you see that again now?
Sorry?
You can see it again now,
can
you? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'll leave it in this view. Yeah. Cool.
So up on Waiheke Island, it is a very big problem, and well, we're fortunate to get a glimpse of what it could look like if it got out of control where we live in Golden Bay. So I bring these photographs back to the guys and say, we've got to get this nailed. We can't afford to let it look like this. So they've experimented with quite a lot of different options. So this next one, this is in one of the reserves on Waiheke Island. So this is where the Auckland Regional Council are spraying it in blocks. So on your right, you'll see a block that was recently sprayed, and literally they follow a GPS line and do a block, I don't know, a few blocks every year. And on your left half of the photo is the climbing asparagus that will be due for the next hit. So they're going back and repeating one block after the other because of that long seed life. That is the key thing. For those that like to look around and see what else is around, I can send you this report. This is from Queensland in 2006, where she tried 18 different options of how to kill it. The most effective, not surprisingly, of course, is to dig it up. The problem of digging it up, if you're in bushy terrain, there's a lot of roots around from other trees, and where we are, there's a lot of rocks, and it grows very well inside rocky terrains and so on. So digging up is possible. We have done it on an organic property, basically on what used to be an ancient, just grassy area. So that worked well. But for those that aren't able to dig it up, and Nigel can talk a little bit maybe about his experiences with digging it up and digging out the crown, and we can add that in. But this study in Queensland particularly said dig it out, lay it on the surface, and it'll be dead in 30 days. So it does give you a non-chemical option. And certainly for when you've only got the odd plant and you don't want to be carrying spray gear with you, just a small digging tool can be really good. This one though is the experience we've got has been based on our knowledge from talking with the lead dock staff person at Little Barrier Island, talking with the Auckland Regional Council, and Andy Spence, who runs Cut and Paste on Waiheke Island. So the key thing is that, as it says here, the seedlings will keep appearing for years. So if you've got a dead plant and then a new one pops up almost exactly the same spot, it's not because you haven't killed it, it's because there's another seedling has popped up. So you can get easily mistaken by that process. And go on to the next one. So I hope you can read all this. So as I said, the easiest thing is to dig it out. and certainly if you got the option, go for it. But when you've got large numbers, like I showed earlier on, spraying is the third option. If you haven't got access to spray, though, the second option would be to use something like a glyphosate gel. So cut and paste their original or their bamboo buster. And if you wear rubber gloves, you can just smear it on along the length of the plant on the stems. And that works pretty well. So the key thing, though, is that you're trying to get it down into the root system. If you use strong chemicals with surfactants, it will tend to just burn the leaves. And also the other thing is the time of year has got significance as well, so that during the heat of the summer, they tend to shut down a bit because of such delicate leaves. And in the winter time, certainly down in the South Island, they do tend to shut down to some extent in the winter. So if you're in the north, it probably is quite different. Then the third option is the key thing, and this is where our team found it very hard to understand why 1/3% glyphosate is actually the right amount. And this is what they've been doing on Waiheke Island after years of experimentation. So, and no extra surfactant added. So, and you want to only use the 360 glyphosate. And the key thing is that by the soft leaves then don't die immediately, and it has plenty of time to sink down. But also the other advantage is that native seedlings around it will almost all not die. The only exceptions would be ones like wineberry and kawakawa, which have got very delicate leaves. So we've experimented with that. The TDC, Tasman District Council, gave us some money, believe it or not, what was it now, 10 years ago. And we experimented with different dilutions and took photos, and definitely the lower strength, the coprosmas and akiakis, nios, they all came through. So that does work pretty well. You can take a handheld spray guard as well. So the key thing then, as we said, definitely with high density areas, that's the thing. But also the other issue, though, is that if it's well established and growing up the trees, you can either have someone going ahead of you and laying them on the ground to spray, so they won't necessarily be able to unwrap all of it. But if you get 3/4 of it off the seedling, put it on the ground, and then that works even better. We have, in some cases, we have looked at trying to use hedge cutters, but then you are taking off the tops of the seedlings at the same time. So that's that. So that really is it. And then Nigel, if you'd like to put in your bit about your experiences with digging up the crown, because that's good to hear that as well.
Yeah, so we've been taught by Darryl Key, who's a well-known weed professional around Wellington. He worked for Greater Wellington back in the day, and he taught us just to take out the crown of the climbing asparagus. That we don't need to take out what people know as tubers. He says the tubers aren't tubers per se, like a potato. They're rather just a thick water/nutrient storage vessel along the root, and that the crown of the climbing asparagus is basically rhizomes. It's got the roots underneath and the stems above. So as long as we're taking out the white stem bits in the middle, that's sufficient. We tend to use folding chisels for that, although I have been known to use my secateurs when they're closed. And yeah, that's been effective for us. It does take time, like we've just about lost volunteers to, when we have multiple working bees and they're just doing climbing asparagus. It's not much fun, but it has worked.
Yes, I guess that's the thing, that for individual plants it's good, but when you've got a whole sea of it, this is when it gets to spraying. And so we did recently a patch in thick, fairly mature bush, and this is the point. It can live quite happily in almost full shade. So that was a spray job, and well, we sprayed a little bit, but in fact the team leader decided to just do the rubber glove and smearing process, and we're going to be going back there shortly to see how it's getting along. But as I said, it can be confusing because new seedlings will be popping up after a year.
Oh, thank you. That's really interesting. It's made a lot of chat in the chat with lots of recommendations. So I recommend people have a look and read that.
Yeah. One final thing. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can I just add in? The reason we've got it in Golden Bay is almost entirely it's just on the edges of settlements, because in Golden Bay it was very popular as a cut flower plant because of the berries, and they were using it at cemeteries, and then they would throw them over the fence at the cemeteries. So the old cemetery down below us here, there's a nice little patch just over the fence. And also people would throw it just on the back of their compost heap at the back of the garden, and then it would just start wandering off down into the bush.
Yeah, no, so there's lots of people asking about and giving advice in the chat with using about the glyphosate, cutting it, all sorts of things. So one person asking, what coverage of the plant do you think is needed?
I think a reasonable coverage is probably sufficient.
This person,
that's why it's good to. Sorry, that's why it's good to get somebody ahead of you, just pulling them down onto the ground.
And someone has pointed out that, oh, sorry, you're going to go, Alan?
Yeah, hi. So I guess, I've done horticultural spraying and do lots of weed spraying. I think people sometimes think, they need to, especially with glyphosate, cover all of the plant they're spraying, whereas, you definitely don't need 100%. And my gut feel would be much lower, like 50% even would be sort of fine. And that should, and, coming back and doing a quick run where you have a bit of a go and then come back as a second spray is much easier than all this cutting and trimming and all that stuff. But I have to say, I haven't spent a lot of time at all on climbing asparagus. But yeah, I just sort of wonder, people feel they've got to drench everything, which I don't think you do.
Brilliant, thank you. And is that presentation going into the minutes?
Yes, it will be. I see Pamela's got a hand up as well.
Great. Thanks, Pam.
Hi, Nigel. I just want to toe-tickle what you were saying about just getting the crown. And a really good little tip that a colleague taught me who had worked in Australia was using a jib saw. So jib saws are really quite firmer and stronger for cutting jib. And they're really good to cut around that crown, and you can get into the dirt, and it's really effective. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. I've written it down. Another little tip for our team. That's great.
Brilliant. So
actually, can I just mention we actually had a nursery up here that was growing climbing asparagus, thinking it was the native Lycopodium, and was absolutely adamant that this was the thing to use for that people used at funerals. So it's really important for us to get that out there, to let people know there is a difference, and you don't want to use weeds at your funeral.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've still got Nigel to speak. Have we, about Old Man Bed's alternative?
Yeah, we do. So I was just having trouble finding being the slide jockey again. Can you see the Old Man's Bed slide now?
No, we can't.
What can you see?
white screen.
I can see black.
Try.
So while people wait, have a look at the chat because there is a lot of information in there, and especially about weddings, which is quite amusing.
Yeah.
For the slideshow
Climbing
now?
asparagus was
Yep.
bought in for bridal bouquets.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right, so let's get moving on to Old Man's Beard. Thank you,
Okay.
Nigel.
Yeah. So I understand some of you up north might not have seen Old Man's Beard. Like, you know, we rarely see moth plant down this way. So Old Man's Beard is a vine. It basically clambers over trees, smothers them, kills them, grows at a rate of knots. It has nodes that are about every 15 centimeters, and if left on the ground, each node can root and then shoots up. So quite often we're following the vine along the ground, tackling, you know, normally each node, either pulling them if they're just very lightly rooted, but typically cutting them. So we cut the vines off at chest height, then we cut either under or through each node that's rooting. Up until a couple of years ago, we were pasting it with Arum gel, and we've largely changed to use Glymax now, which was specially formulated for Old Man's Beard. And then once you've done all that, you need to ensure that your cut vines and roots are off the ground because they're going to resprout if you leave them there. Typically, we don't get everything on our first visit. We might get 80 or 90%, and then we need to go back and check what's still alive after a couple of weeks or so. So kind of following on from hearing about Chris's, and you know, I got a copy of Chris's paper last year. I think Sam initially suggested we use drill and fill, and we thought, oh, well, you know, I spoke to our owner at Wellington Council, and she said, what about the doing countersink and paste? So I read Chris's paper, and we gave it a bit of a go. The advantages we were looking for were something more efficient, that we could possibly just drill and fill and walk away and come back a couple of weeks later and see what's left. There's some other advantages, though, that if you drill and fill, or sorry, countersink and paste, that you might have multiple roots coming off a node, and if you cut underneath, you might miss some of the roots. So you can ensure all the roots are poisoned by killing the vine at the node. If we don't chop the vines, we don't need to hang them up, so it speeds it up again. And finally, if we're working on a slope, we're not having to like dig out roots and potentially destabilize the slope. So there's advantages in slope stability if we can just countersink and paste. So we tried it a little bit over sort of late autumn, early winter last year. We tackled a number of sizes between about 3 centimetre and 10 centimetre roots. Filled 4 of them with Glymax, and we thought we'd try some with Arum as well in case the Glymax didn't work. And some of them we didn't cut the vines at all. We just left everything in place and then came back a couple of months later to check. And we found out they're actually 100% successful. Sort of getting to Alan's point a little bit, we're probably over killing them. You know, we are sort of giving them a hard time. We're doing a lot of holes, so we'll do some experiments to see how many holes we might need. But it's certainly quite efficient. This is a spot we tackled a couple of months ago. So in the top there, you've got the vines growing. We just found some of the big roots, went and drilled and filled those. And then at the bottom, we've got Sam just there a few weeks later. And there's just a little bit of, there's a few nodes that we hadn't found where the green was from. So it makes it much quicker. We can just hunt down those nodes and not need to tackle the whole lot. It's not always that efficient, I should say. Like I did some over spring and I missed, the big roots were quite scattered and I missed quite a few of them and we thought it wasn't working. So yeah, it's horses for courses, I guess, but in the right situation, it is more efficient. We have also been trying scrape and paste a little bit. I think it was Keith who suggested we try it after I was talking about countersink and paste. We haven't really tried it in isolation yet. We're tending to do it in combination with either cut and paste or countersink and paste. So in this top picture on the right, we've got quite a thin root. There might be a bigger node underneath the ground. We've done quite a lot of cutting around the node on the top, and we scraped down the root and pasted that. We're not quite sure how that's going to work out yet, so that's just one thing we're trying. And then on the right hand side, it was quite high up on the wall. I couldn't get into countersink and paste or cut and paste the main root node there. So we cut it off a bit further down and scrape and pasted that. So we're just sort of hopeful that scrape and pasting tops up our coverage. I'll be interested actually to hear from people how far down they think we should scrape. I don't know where the phylum and phloem are on the clematis. That's something we're going to try and research. And then in this case, we gave it the complete works. This was on the left, you got the vine. It's fairly thick. It's going right up into the trees at the top there. And it was quite hard to find. We didn't really want to go back there, so we just sort of. And quite often the beauty of Old Man's Beard is when you get these single vines that are only rooted in one place, and there's heaps of growth, and they're lovely to control, much better than the ones that are rooting every 15 centimeters through blackberry or Cape ivy or other horrible weeds. Anyway, this one's quite beautiful because it's got a single trunk. We managed to chop the trunk and hang it up, and then we did a cut and paste, and we've done a countersink and paste and a scrape and paste on the roots. You'll also see on the right hand side, I ended up investing in this impact driver. It doesn't have so the battery on this one is in the main handle. So it probably doesn't have the capacity that the one that Chris has, but it's really handy for just fitting in my tool belt. I found this one online in a sale. It was about $99. And I've got an 18mm countersink bit on that. So this is really what I take in my tool bag now. I've got my drill, I've got my saw, my secateurs, and the gel. So really, our next steps, we want to try and assess how far along the vine the gel will travel. The sort of core consensus is it probably goes about 1/2 meter or about 3 nodes. We tried one where it was about 10 nodes and it didn't get all the way along there, but we'll sort of continue to experiment a bit with that. We want to trial scrape and paste in isolation. And we also want to sort of try and build up a bit of a catalogue of different patterns or different, rules of thumb for how we might tackle different types of nodes. Sometimes it does still feel like, what do I feel like on the day, or what's handy. If I don't have the drill, I tend to scrape it with either the saw or the secateurs. So we'll hopefully develop some of those out. Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you. There's quite a few questions. You did actually answer some of them while you were talking. So someone was asking, what is the time taken and difficult of drilling compared to cutting a section out and pasting each end? So which is more effective in terms of time-wise?
Yeah, so drilling is probably 15 seconds. So it is quicker than cutting and pasting.
Brilliant. And in terms of if a vine is against a wall or something, how important is it to do the side that you can't reach? Have you found that doing just one side is effective?
Yeah, with drilling or with scrape and pasting?
It doesn't say so.
Yeah. I should probably just revisit my previous answer. So when I said 15 seconds, that's probably 15 seconds per hole. So we might do 6 holes. So I think it probably is still a bit quicker. And and then the holes against the wall, I just drill, where it's going into the ground really. And I tend just to be scraping one side when we're scraping at the moment. But I'm keen for feedback on what other people are doing.
Brilliant. There's quite a lot of feedback in the chat about different methods. And someone was asking, was the last photo all old man's beard?
The big vine?
Yeah.
That was, hang on, let me just check. I'm not showing anymore, am I? No, it's just, just the vines almost beard, and we couldn't even see any leaves or flowers. It's like way up in the canopy.
There was another photo straight after that one, I think.
This one.
That one.
This was actually taken off the EWC page. Let's see what it is.
So, and someone's
it's
asking.
not one of mine.
Pam would like a video of someone scraping, and so that she can for her and put it up on the Facebook page. Is anyone keen to do a little how-to video on scraping and pasting?
It might be on the cut and paste website.
Brilliant. So we're coming up for our 10 minutes.
Did you hear that one?
I put a link up to the video that Mary Stewart and I did about God knows how many years ago.
Brilliant. That's in the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, there's a lot of techniques in there. So does anybody have a burning question they would like answered that's not already answered in the chat? Heidi.
Hi, thanks for having me along today. I'm just wondering whether any of you have tried X-tree basil on the stems of any of the weeds that you've talked about today, except the Selaginella. We use the little 5-litre pump spray things, and if it's not too far to walk or carry them, we found that quite effective. You can just spray a wee bit on the stem of most woody weeds or vines and kill them standing. So I just wondered whether you'd try that on any of the ones that we've talked about today.
I haven't personally tried it. We had hoped Darryl Key would come along to this, who's been using it quite a lot in Wellington. There's been a paper from someone at Massey comparing X-tree basil and Glymax, I think, on Old Man's Beard, and she found X-tree basil worked really well for them. Yeah, I think the Glymax, they tried it with a 50-centimetre long vine, so it wasn't as effective. But obviously there'd be some time, some efficiency to using X-tree basil. And I'm not sure if Ilona might give us permission to share that one, or I'm not sure it was Ilona or Massey that commissioned it.
Cool. Okay, thanks for that, Nigel.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi.
Brilliant. We're kind of rocking on in time. So thank you very much to all those presenters. That was really interesting. Unfortunately, only the first one was not recorded, but after that it is. But the original research paper is going to be shared. So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it.